Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, our stakeholders, as well as members of the public at home. My name is Mashilo Buluk. I'm the CEO of Film and Publication Board, the regulator of online content in South Africa. As you may recall, the presidential proclamation that put into operation the Film and Publication Amendment Act on the 1st of March has significantly transformed the FPB from a narrow classification authority to an online content regulator with the legitimate powers to license online distributors, renew of those licenses, as well as the full capacity to enforce compliance with the provisions of the Act. Now, this significant transformation requires that we as the FPB should develop adequate regulatory instruments to regulate the industry as well as enforce compliance with the provisions of the Act. In cases of non-compliance, the expectation is that we issue penalties, especially in cases where we feel that there's no cooperation from the operators. As part of building this regulatory capacity and capability, we as the FPB, we have in the last 3 months issued very critical documents which I want to share with you today. The first one, if you recall, we gazetted 2 critical notices in terms of section 24 and 27 of the Act, which in essence require online content distributors and other internet service providers to register with the FPB. That's number 1. Number 2, that they need to indicate to us how do they protect children, women, and other members of the public, including people with disabilities, on online harms. We request that they submit or register with us and submit those reports within 90 days. And the 90 days expire on the 28th of January. For those that haven't done so, we request that they immediately register with us or submit those reports, because any act of defiance or any act of non-compliance with these notices will really trigger us to initiate the process, the legal process of the enforcement committee, where huge penalties will be imposed, and that's not the intention. And in respect of this notice, particularly point B, in which we require that the entities submit reports on how they are protecting the children and women and people with disabilities around online harms. The expectation is that some of these industry players may not be in the perfect position, but we want them to be as honest as possible so that we can help them, can see areas of non-compliance, areas where they're not doing well, and then we can assist them. But for those that don't want to be honest with us, indeed, we will not hesitate to implement the provisions of the Act. And we request that come 28th, they need to have complied with notices. Anyone with queries regarding notices can immediately contact the FPB or the FPB team on how to comply and what are the requirements around that. And then the second set of documents that we released on the 6th of January are the gazettes that are done in terms of Section 31 of the Amendment Act. These are the regulations, like I said, to help us to enforce compliance with the Act and regulate the industry accordingly. There are a number of regulations, and the team will outline the contents of those regulations. The first one is around what you call the process to license, to apply, and the process to apply and renew online content distribution licenses. Now, the importance of this regulation or these procedures in particular are an attempt for the FPB to move away from the agreement licensing model, which hasn't really made us or put us in a favorable position to implement the Act. Then the second one is around the procedures for handling public complaints, which will outline how members of the public can file and how their complaints and how those complaints will be dealt with internally, and the nature of the complaints that can be filed with the FPB, because we find that it's a legitimate complaint, but it's not within the remit of the FPB as the content regulator. Then the third one is around the new tariff, which you have done in terms of the Act, so that people know if you want to access certain services within the FPB, like online registration or licensing, what are the applicable fees. There will obviously be certain exemptions, particularly for smaller role players or smaller content distributors. And then the last rule, in the Gazette are the rules of the Enforcement Committee. As we are aware, we recently established the Enforcement Committee, and Council has, in line with the Act, appointed the Enforcement Committee, which is chaired by retired Judge Masipa and its committee members. So the committees is more to deal with the operational modalities of the Enforcement Committee and how they conduct their business. This is so that the process that they engage in is a fair, transparent process constituent to the provisions of the South African Constitution. Now, these regulatory instruments, the release of these regulatory instruments follows a process that you may recall was instituted by the FPB earlier in July, August, in which consulted members of the public around what kind of regulatory instruments would they need for us to regulate the sector adequately. We have taken those into account. But like we're saying, these are just drafts following from those discussions, and we hope members of the public will be able to make inputs, or industry will be able to make inputs on how they can be strengthened. We don't want the instruments that will only serve the FPB, but they must serve the public, especially the public complaints, the rules of the Enforcement Committee, so that whatever that we do as the FPB is there to protect the public from online harms. That's the reason why we continue to exist as the FPB, and that is in line with the provisions of the Act. So the Gazette have been published on the 6th of January, and people have been given 30 days on which to submit their inputs or written comments. But while awaiting written inputs, members of the FPB team will be crisscrossing the country, engaging with the members of the public around, particularly the public complaints, because as we are aware, there's a lot of online harms, and our intention as the FPB, we want to ensure that every member of the South African Society of Publics is protected when they go online, irrespective of what purpose they want to use the online platforms, whether it's for educational, whether it's for social, or whether it's for economic purposes. And whether you are a man, whether you are a woman, whether you are a child, you should be protected. We all know the ongoing impacts around the exposure of whether it's the children or even our women, the kind of gender-based violence that has since been transferred from the physical space into the online environment. And as the FPB, we are dealing with those. So the public complaints are there to help on how do we deal with the complaints. And as the FPB, we have actually started putting together a team that will deal with these public complaints, because our understanding that there will be a lot of public complaints that will be coming or being forwarded to the FPB, and we must deal with them as quickly as possible, so that within a specific time, whatever recourse that is to follow should have been undertaken, and justice is meted out, because this will be the infringement of the rights of certain publics if their rights are violated online. We request members of the public to participate in this process, whether through written or oral submissions as they engage with the team, so that we create a safer online environment as the key mandate of us as the FPB. We are looking forward to your engagement and your contribution in this process, because we need all of you to join us creating a safer online environment. It's not only the role of the FPB, it's a role that requires all of us. Members of the public, members of the media, who have to ensure that the public are adequately educated around some of these harms. And ours as the regulator will ensure that the provisions of the Act are enforced without fear or favor, because that's the reason why we exist and we use public money for that purpose. I thank you.